Alright folks, what is up? One Big Bug and I am coming at you with FTL Faster Than Light 101, and today we're going to take an in-depth look at the Zoltan Cruiser. Now first off, I'm going to say this up front and I'm going to put it in the vlog as well. I feel like the biggest idiot in the world right now. Why? Because while clearing out all my recorded stuff today from my previous game, I accidentally deleted all of my LOL replays. So every game I had recorded and replays, and I was actually planning on doing a montage for the first time in my life, taking my first stab at a montage. I can't. All my LOL replays are gone. All of my screenshots are gone. Everything is gone. I deleted it all like a dumbass and I didn't have backups. Oh, that should teach me, but it won't. Anyways, let us continue. So today we will be looking at the Zoltan Cruiser. Now, the Zoltan Cruiser is very unique, and I'll get into why a little bit. You can probably see why. It's also a little tough to start. But first, let's go over the ship itself. This ship has a couple major drawbacks, but it has a little something to help balance that out. First off, you start with 3 Zoltans. Now, Zoltans provide their own power, but they also only have 75% health. So each Zoltan only has about 70 health instead of 100. So they're not very good at fending off borders. But again, like I said, the advantage is whatever room they're in, they provide one bar of power to that system. So you can have extra power in the ship in systems without having to pay for it. The major drawback to the Zoltan Cruiser is if you need to air out a sector of the ship. You have this section here and this section here. It's good for airing out over here and good for airing out over here. But this section kind of right in here, up in here and up in here, yeah, really not all that great for drafting out oxygen. So it's actually a more difficult ship in order to suffocate enemies from. And if they end up in here in this section, it's really a lot to suffocate them out. You have to drop a lot of your oxygen to suffocate them out. And until you get more crew members or you get lucky and divert them into the med bay, which is a trick I'm learning to do, how not just to suffocate enemies, but how to herd them to where I want them to go. Because your Zoltans, they just cannot fend them off. They don't have enough health. So that's a major drawback to the ship. But to offset that, as you can see by looking at it, you automatically start with level 2 doors. So that's a major positive in favor of the ship that helps kind of make up for that, is that you're starting with level 2 doors, so they can't just have, you know, the run of the ship. They actually have to yeah, that was good. They actually have to blast through the doors in order to get anywhere. And the starting on this as well is a little hindered because you only have 1 bar of engines instead of 2 bars. So if your engines take any damage at all, they're automatically offline. You don't have that 1 bar of safety, and you don't have as much dodge as you would in another ship. But to offset that, you have the Zoltan Shield, an unexplained technology, I'll just read it off here, that creates a nearly impenetrable shield. Only energy outbursts from FTL engines is powerful enough to recharge it. And I'll go more in depth to what that does. You also start with 3 bars in your weapons, but it's a little weird. Like I said, I have to show you it. I have to explain it to you. And yeah, there's a breeze going on, and it's rather annoying. I'm going to see if I can't set my fan to help offset it some. Hopefully you won't hear my fan too much, because my fan is actually pretty quiet. Yeah, that's right. So you start off with the halberd beam. Now the halberd beam is unique among beam weapons because it's the only beam weapon that actually does 2 damage, which means it can actually penetrate shields. Beam weapons are reduced 1 damage per every bar of shields. So if the ship has 2 shield dots, the halberd beam won't do anything. But if it only has 1 shield dot, it'll actually do 1 damage per room that it passes across. So it does have partial shield piercing. And it's the only one that can do that and actually damage the ship. There's another beam that can do that, the anti-bio beam, but the anti-bio beam does not actually damage shields. You know, as it says bio, it damages crew members, but that's a whole nother story. It also has a low breach chance, has a 17-second recharge time. It's slow, but like I said, it's reliable. It's actually pretty strong, and it's going to be your main source of damage for the first few areas. The other weapon you start with is probably the worst missile launcher in the game, and that's the Leto. As you can even see right here, the launcher is outdated and weak, but can still be effective. It only requires 1 power, and it shoots a missile. It has a really short recharge time in only 9 seconds, but only does 1 damage. So not only does it not do a lot of damage, but it actually can chew up missiles pretty fast. And so it's really, really easy to tear through a missile supply with this missile launcher and not be able to do a lot of damage. So it's probably the worst missile launcher that you could possibly have on any ship. So this is definitely something you need to transition out of, as well as the halberd beam. The halberd beam you may be able to stick with in late game, but I'm not a big fan of beam weapons. So yeah, the Leto is definitely something that you just want to be out of. So let's actually get into the game here and I can show you a little bit more. Now, as you can see, the color around the Zoltan ship is green. That is the Zoltan shield, which is just displayed right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars. That means that this shield can absorb 5 points of damage before going down. Nothing can penetrate that shield until it's down. You know, missiles that can pass through normal shields, have full shield penetration, will just damage the Zoltan shield. Beam weapons and anything else will damage the shield, but will not penetrate. So whatever you're fighting actually has to penetrate this shield before it can actually start damaging your main shields and to your hull itself. Now, one major drawback to the Zoltan is it starts off with very little power. You only have enough power to really charge up the Leto. So a lot of people say you don't have to do this, but I would say you really have to put 2 Zoltan crew members into your weapons room. Well, actually, you could put 1 in here, and then it'll just dock off a power point. So you can have 1 in shields and 1 in weapons, and then you can buy the extra power and just charge up the halberd beam. A lot of people say, well, why not switch back and forth, use the Leto first, then the halberd beam? Because the halberd beam takes 15 seconds to charge. And the reality is that the halberd beam will pierce any ship's shield in the first level. So you have plenty of time to get 1 more bar of system power in your weapons and 1 more bar of power to power everything up. Now, technically, you don't actually need power in your power bay, because when your Zoltans go, they'll automatically, as you can see here, power the med bay by themselves. But when you start getting other crew members, you really can't afford to keep pulling a Zoltan in to deal with powering the med bay. So it actually does help to have an extra bar of power that you can move around, or an extra bar of power that you just have that you can use to power up your med bay. In the early game, don't need to worry about it. In the later game, you really should have that extra bar of energy in order to power up the med bay. So let's see, anything else? Well, you start out with 16 fuel, 12 missiles, 2 drone parts. Despite not having a drone, you can install a drone control, and you can have the standard 2 drones that you can have installed on the system. Anything other than that, off the top of my head, not entirely, to be honest with you. One trick, though, with the ship is you do not have to have your second bar of shields by the time you leave. As a matter of fact, I usually work on getting the Leto powered up, which is really easy, and then I just save whatever else I get into the second, and I can even save everything I get in the second sector until I get to the end. That way, if I come across shops, I can buy weapons and buy extra things and quickly get away from the Leto and get away from the halberd beam into more what I call effective weapons. This is the only ship where I personally actually don't spend any scrap upgrading my ship most of the time until I'm ready to jump to the next sector. When I'm ready to jump to the next sector, or after I jump to the next sector, then I'll look and say, okay, what can I improve? Well, maybe I should get my second bar of shields, or well, I have this new weapon, so let me power this up. Because your Zoltan shield gives you such an advantage in terms of safety that you can actually get by without having to power up your shields until the end of the second sector. So it's a really effective ship in that term. And it's not that difficult to use. It can get through the first, second, even third sector as you see it now, except you might want to bump up your shields to level 2. But other than that, as you see the ship now, you don't have to spend anything to upgrade it. Well, just get your Leto powered up, which takes very little, maybe a second bar of shields by the end of the third, and all the other scrap that you get, you can use at shops. So it makes it real easy to buy things for in the early game, real easy to buy things for in the late game as well, because you can continue that trend of just not spending anything until you get to the end of the level where you're gonna move on to the next sector. So it's really effective that way. It's a really good ship to use when you can get hold of it. You have to unlock it through an event in the game where you'll meet some Zoltans. They'll send you to the sector and there'll be a rebel fighter. And you actually have the option to talk your way through the encounter with the rebel fighter rather than just going gung-ho and fighting them, which would be the normal reaction. But you have to choose the right chat options in order to get through. You make the right chat options, then, spoiler alert at this point. Spoiler alert beforehand, but this is going to be real spoiler alert. Then the rebel fighter will change into a Zoltan Cruiser. They'll say they were testing you, and they give you access to this cruiser. So let's give you a little look at what this ship can do here. Sending away party. Nothing happened. Alright, distress call. Let's look at this distress call. Down the surface, invite him to join the crew. And we get a rock crew member. Well, let's put him on engines. This is not going the way I want it, but... Alright, the civilian ship. Alright, so here we have a Mantis scout, Mantis ship, and all we have is the halberd beam. So what I want to do is I just want to touch the halberd beam into the shield room, and then if I do it right, like that, it actually, oops, I can even bring it a little bit lower. Yeah, just like that. By doing it like this is the one thing with beam weapons, is this now cuts across 4 rooms. It hits the shield room, even though it's just barely there, cuts across the pilot room, cuts across this empty room, and just barely touches the weapons room. So that counts as 4 rooms it's going to cut across. So that's guaranteed 4 damage that this ship is going to take when my halberd beam does finally fire. Which, we're just waiting for that. You see 2 damage there, absorbed by my shields. The bomb, when it goes off, will not be able to penetrate the shields either. But it took the shields out. And when the shields went down, they started taking 2 damage per room. And as you can see, I just really blew through that ship. No problem. One drawback I did forget to mention about the Zoltan Cruiser is its layout in terms of pathing. In order to get from this section here to this section here, you have to go this way. There's no convenient path coming down, so you really got a long roundabout way to go. Now, in one respect, this can be bad, because it takes a long time to travel for somebody like a rock guy who's all the way back in the engines and needs to get here. That's a long walk. But on the other hand, it actually can make it easier to herd invaders to your med bay, where it's easier for your crew to fight them off. You know, it makes it easier to suffocate them because they have a long way to go before they get this area. So you can just move all your crew all together over in this section and then suffocate out the rest of the ship. So it's really helpful in that way. Let's jump one more spot into a nebula. We'll attack the pirate ship. All right, now we have a slug interceptor. And what I want to do is take my halberd beam and just like... No, actually, I think I want to do it this way. Yeah. So it's going to do 1 damage in the oxygen room. Then it's going to do 1 damage when it hits the shield. Hopefully, it'll take the shield out. That way, when it crosses over the weapons room, it'll do 2 damage. And then when it crosses into the pilot, it'll do 2 damage. So that would be 1, 2, 4... 6 damage by the time my beam is done cutting across. Hang on just a second. I apologize, my dogs were going a little nuts. I had to shush them up at least a little bit. Now, yeah, heavy lasers and ion weapons are definitely something that's really bad. But there you go. Now they're trying to escape. You see how much damage we've done already? We've almost managed to kill them. And now we'll just cut across straight this way and make sure to get their engines and take them out. And we shall be able to finish them off without much problem. Excuse me one more second. I apologize again. I should stop the recording, not just the game. You see, really easy to take out. I still have 1 bar of my Zoltan shield left. Now, when it comes to the Zoltan, your worst enemies are ion weapons, because they can easily, you know, take 2 damage to your shields. Beam weapons, because beam weapons will drop their entire amount of damage onto your shields. So if you come up against a pike beam that was meant to cut across 5 rooms, then it will do 5 damage to your shield. And one of the biggest enemies of any Zoltan Cruiser is drones. Attack drones, whether they be beam drones or anti-ship drones, are the worst thing that you can come across, mainly because of how fast they attack. Moving back and forth, they can really drop your shields very, very, very quickly. And you just don't want to deal with that. So it is vital that you use the halberd beam to cut through the drone control so that you damage the drone control or destroy the drone control and knock the drone out as quickly as possible. Now, you know, real easy here. There we go. We got an extra power bar there. So there we go. We got our Leto powered up. And let's show you that real quick. I got 1 more ship to go as well. So we're going to attack the ship. We're going to use the Leto onto the shields. You'll see here that when the beam weapon hits, watch on my shields what happens. Alright, so their shields are down, and I want to do the same thing I did before. I want to cut across all 4 rooms. So that'll be 2, 4, 6, 8 damage. That will destroy them when my beam fires. You see? There was just a small beam that was meant to cut across 2 rooms. They're trying to escape. They're not going to get far. There they go. They're destroyed. But as you saw, that Leto only did 1 damage. The Leto's basic function in the game is to try and knock the enemy shields out or down to that 1 bar so that the halberd beam can be effective. By the time you get to Sector 3, you'll start seeing 2 bars of shields. So it's really important to use the Leto to try and knock that down to 1 bar, and then use your halberd beam to try and take the shields out and cut across other rooms in the ship. How you place your beam is really critical in how well you're going to do in a fight with the Zoltan Cruiser. Now let's go back to the hangar. Now, there are, of course, the 3 unlocks. The one that I didn't do is with the Zoltan Cruiser, you have 29 power in systems at the same time. In other words, you can only get 25 power maximum when you max out your generator. You get 25 power, and then you have your 3 Zoltans, so it's 26, 27, 28. You need to get 1 more Zoltan, and you need to have 4 Zoltan by the time you max out your generator and be able to place all of that power into systems at the same time. You do that, that's 29 power in systems at the same time. What I have done is shields holding, destroy a ship before it gets through the Zoltan shield. You saw me just do that on here. I took out 2 enemies before they got through my shields, if not 3. Before they could even cut through my shield. So that's not a difficult one to get. And then this one, a little more difficult. Get to Sector 5 without upgrading your Zoltan, without upgrading the reactor in your Zoltan Cruiser. To do that, you really need to play a separate game. The trick to do that is just to rush. It is literally, you're not there to fight. You're there to jump from sector to sector to sector as quickly as you can. You can fight in Sector 1, 2, and even in Sector 3. Use your money, buy fuels, buy missiles for the Leto to help you get through, but your main objective is fuel. Do that, and then just speed your way to Sector 3. Use the longest jumps possible. Go directly for the exit. Hit the exit and jump to the next sector. Do that all the way to level 5. Avoid fights that look like they're going to be too difficult. And just plow your way through. Get to Sector 5. Automatically unlocked. End the game right there. Head back to the beginning. And then you will get Type B here. Now, I don't have a lot of experience with the Type B cruiser. But I will say there is some difficulty to this ship. First out, the layout's a little bit better in terms of starving an enemy out. You get doors here and doors here, which make it really easy to starve out this large section. But then you have all of this sector back here, which will make it really difficult to starve an enemy out. I mean, you'll have to empty out a lot of your ship in order to starve enemies out. You do have a door back here, but that's still a long way to go in order to starve an enemy out. So, yeah, but the layout in terms of moving around the ship is a little bit better. It's easier to move around. There are plenty of doors to get around there, but you only start with level 1 doors on the, what is this called here? Nother. You start with 4 bars of weapons. You have 2 ion blasters and a pike beam. Pike beam only does 1 damage per room, so it cannot pass through shields. It says it allows for partial shield piercing. No. 1 bar of shields will completely reject the laser, so it doesn't pierce any shields at all. The whole trick with this ship is to get your ion blast to take down the shields, to nullify the enemy weapons, then use your pike beam to do damage. And you really have to do it quickly. Why? Because you get no shields on this ship. You only have 1 bar. 1 bar is not enough to pump up your shields. And if you take a look here on the right, when I go over this, you'll see your first shield bar is 100 scrap. Very expensive. And then it's 20, 30, 40, 60, 80, and then 100 again in order to get 4 scrap. So it really takes a lot of scrap to get your 4 bar shields. It's more than any other ship. At least I believe so. So, yeah, that's really difficult. That's really something you got to work for on the ship. But again, you start with 3 Zoltan crew members and your Zoltan shields. You can install the drone system, give you a typical 2 drones. You start out level 2 engines, fully powered up. Level 1 doors, level 1 sensors, and all that. You know, everything else is basic. You know, so you can see here, I can power up the ion blast, but that's about it. So 1 in shields. Actually, I want you here and you here. Then we power down our med bay, and we can power up the pike beam. In this ship, of course, you have no missiles, because you have no missile launcher, 2 drone parts, despite having no drones, and 16 fuel. As again, as you can see, no shields whatsoever, but you do have your Zoltan shield. Now, normally I'd buy an extra bar of power and pump it right into the engines, but in this case, you really want to save it. and lead them to their destination. Yeah, whatever. Okay, thank you. Well, their destination's right there. Alright. And wow, that was a lot of scrap already off the bat. I'd love to go to that store, but again, we're looking for a fight. So Ion Blast, which will just hit the shields and take them down, hopefully. And then we'll Ion Blast the weapons next. And shields and weapons. And Pike Beam is ready, which is a long-ass beam. Shields and weapons. I probably could have done the Pike Beam better by angling it and cutting through a few more rooms. Like so. Not paying attention to my Ion Blasters. It really actually helps to have auto fire on. When using Ion Blasters, it really helps to have auto fire running. There you go. And that's basically how you go through these fights. I usually really talk down about using auto fire because it's better to manually target everything. But again, when it comes to ion weapons, it really, 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 really helps to have. Actually, I want to go. Great. There went my. Let's put both ion blasts because these missiles are gonna fucking hurt. Repower up the Pike Beam. Ow. Now I'm really screwed. You can see what happens when you do things wrong and things start going bad. And there goes my Pike Beam again. But fortunately now we have both ions on the weapons, which really doesn't matter that much, as they just came back up. Hopefully both my ions will fire and take those out before... Oh, of course it missed. We're just going to cut the Pike Beam across there and do our best to really take out that... There we go. Finally. The cloaking is what's making this really fucking difficult. Alright, and we'll take the Pike Beam and cut it this way. There we go. Finally took it out, but you can see how annoying some things get, especially when you make bad decisions. We don't have enough. Yeah, warning, shields critical. No shit, really? Weapons. You stay in shields. And we'll do one more sector. Oh god. Did I just jump into the wrong zone? Unfortunately, my Zoltan shields will help protect me where he has no shields at all to begin with. So that will play to my advantage for at least a little bit. There we go. But now I have to wait for my FTL to charge up. And hope that I don't get too many more asteroids coming across, because I no longer have protection against asteroids. And blam, there you go. Damage. Blam, damage. Get the F out. Okay. We're going to stay out of it. Just so I can... You know, that's what it takes to get that second bar of shields. You know, it's really easy to take a lot of damage in this game, especially when you don't do the right thing. With that first ship, I should have targeted both ions onto his weapons in the first place. So I targeted weapons and engines so I could guarantee better hits. But the reality is Pike Beams don't miss. You know, forgetting that, I really should have targeted both his weapons. So that was something that I definitely... screwed up there as we accidentally opened the door. So again, there's not much to tell about this ship. That's just the major drawback to it, is you have no shields and it costs a lot to get that first bar. Then you got to power it up on your own. You really, you actually, in terms of weapons, I feel a little bit weaker with this ship because the pike beam cannot pierce. So you're really reliant on the ion weapons hitting their targets and keeping their targets hit. And you're really reliant on being able to take out their weapons and possibly their shields before they can get through your Zoltan shields. So it can be really, really difficult. So it's a little bit harder to use this ship. But once you get that first bar shield, it goes a little bit easier. But with this ship, you really have to transition out of this build sooner than you would have to transition out of what the original Zoltan Cruiser has, the List A body type. So yeah, this one's a little bit more difficult to use than the other Zoltan Cruiser. As you can see, it took damage because of a silly mistake. And I actually lost about 25% of my shields. So you really, really, really have to focus on doing it right. I don't know how else to explain it other than that. You really have to focus on how you tend to this ship. And you have to transition out of the pike beam sooner than you would out of the halberd beam and the Leto weapon. I can't stress it more than that, really. So that's about it with our Zoltan Cruisers. Next, I think on our next one, I'm probably going to go over the Slug Cruiser because it's the only other one that I have the List B layout for. The Raw Cruiser, I haven't unlocked it yet. The Stealth Cruiser, I haven't unlocked it yet. They're really difficult to unlock, and I haven't unlocked the Mantis Cruiser yet. So I'm going to be working on that. And of course, I haven't got the unidentified cruiser. But even if I don't get the alternate layouts for the ships, I will go over at least the first basic layout with them, the very first basic, and how to deal with them, and how to unlock as well. So until next time, folks, this is One Big Bugga, and I am signing out from FTL Faster Than Light 101, an in-depth look at the Zoltan Cruiser.